Thinking about it. Here we go. Hey friends, I'm here today with Kristina Baehr, who's an attorney who specializes in, drumroll, mold, amongst other things, I'm sure. But Kristina, I'm so thankful to have you here. You're our first legal expert I've met about mold. I was like, I got to talk to her.
I'm so glad. Well, there aren't many of us, but there are a few.
Probably will be more, I'm guessing, over time.
I hope so. I mean, I really hope so. I'm hoping to raise up an army of lawyers to do these cases. More people need help.
There's definitely a need. So I'm so curious, kind of like how you, I don't know, your topics of interest when you started as an attorney and how you got into mold.
So I have always loved litigation, and I was looking after a federal clerkship. I was looking for a firm where I could really do trials. I wanted to do trials, and there was a firm in Austin called McCool-Smith that did trials, a lot of them, and mostly patent litigation. And so I joined them and grew up at that firm, made partner, loved it. I was managing really big intellectual property litigation. So big patent cases at the International Trade Commission, 30 lawyers on the team. And I was really managing the case. So I was the hub of the case, dealing with the senior partners and the, the junior lawyers and then the client. And I loved it, but I started feeling dizzy and lost. And I felt drunk in the middle of the day. And if you're watching this and you're following these series, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. I started forgetting things, and I started going to doctors saying, I feel drunk in the middle of the day. I feel like I've been hit by a truck. I can't wake up in the morning. And of course, they all told me it's definitely stress. It's stress, it's diet. You need to, take out gluten, take out dairy, exercise more, sleep better, sleep hygiene. And so I left my job at McCool-Smith in part on this quest to get healthy and to, I called myself Christina 2.0, and I got this really great job at the U.S. Attorney's Office representing the United States in civil lawsuits, which was a dream job anyway. But it was definitely to a slower pace, lower paycheck to become Christina 2.0. And what I found is I didn't get any better. And I couldn't figure out why. And I was doing the best I could. I was going to all these doctors. So finally I tried one more doctor, and they ran a battery of tests. And one of those tests was a mycotoxin test. And my mycotoxins were through the roof for ochratoxin A and zearalenone. And I thought, I had never had never even heard of that word. But it was during the shutdown of 2020, and my family was a mess. My son had started running into walls and regressing in his developmental milestones.
Wow.
And my 8-year-old daughter had become super aggressive. And so when I heard about mycotoxins and I started reading about it, I was like, oh my God, this is what's happening with my family. And long story short, that's the beginning of the end. We found that our house had become extremely toxic behind the walls because it wasn't flashed properly, and because the roofer omitted a critical piece of the roof, and because the HVAC wasn't done right. And there were a whole bunch of reasons that house had become extremely toxic, and our family was super sick. So I at the time when I was at the U.S. Attorney's Office was doing defensive personal injury cases. And if I've ever seen a personal injury case, this is one, right? The negligence of the builders and the HVAC company and the designer and the engineer, that caused harm to my family. And my family became extremely sick over many, many years. And there were 6 of us, and there was huge property loss. This is a good personal injury case. This is like an open and shut.
No one would take it.
Right?
Yeah.
Nobody would take it. Nobody would even answer my call. And I couldn't get through past a paralegal to a lawyer. And I'm like, listen, hey, can you just spend 20 minutes with me and talk me through the personal injury side of this case? And they wouldn't. And there was a lawyer around Austin. His name's James Kumi. I will not forget him because he did not take my call.
You're going down, James.
I emailed him and I called him, and I left messages saying like, "Hey, I'm another lawyer. This has happened to my family. Can we just talk?" No response, and which I think is just it's upsetting from like a lawyer to lawyer standpoint. But on his website, he says he only does wrongful death cases. So, Bridget, to get representation in this field, you have to die. I mean, that cannot be, right? That cannot be. And so, anyway, long story short, I started building my own case. I found my own lawyers. I brought in one from Florida who's amazing, and then a great hourly lawyer who's a friend of mine who agreed to do it with me on an hourly basis, and started learning about the science and the law and doing a lot of it myself. And I realized, there's such a need. And I left the U.S. Attorney's Office to build the law firm I couldn't find for my own family. So that's a really long answer.
No, I mean, if ever is a Mold story, we know A, it's going to be long. And B, there's going to be lots of twists and turns. Yeah. So I didn't know that you had a personal experience. So I'm sorry to hear that. You live in Austin. Is that correct?
Live in Austin.
Okay. Definitely a hot spot for mold.
Yes.
You hear about it a lot. So this is pretty new, your firm.
Yeah. So I opened in November, had a couple of cases, and then, was just trying to figure out how to put things together. How do you build a practice, like set up a website, all of that. And then CNBC did a story about my family.
Oh my God.
Nothing to do with my law firm at all. They were going to do it about my family. And it just so happened that I had left the U.S. Attorney's Office around the same time. So their article linked directly to my website, and my world just blew up overnight.
Wow.
And since then, I've just been in a mad dash to find other lawyers and raise up other lawyers to take these cases, because I'm only one person. I can't take all of them. And I'm desperate to build up an army of lawyers around the country to take these cases. So that's the mission that I'm on.
I love it. I've been meeting more and more people in this space, and I think we all have our unique angle. Even with me in health, you could say there's a lot of us, but I have my unique angle. So I think we're all bringing like our personal passion to the table. It's awesome. I get a lot of these questions, and my answer is evolving as I learn a little bit more. I mean, to be honest, Kristina, sometimes from a health perspective, I'm just like, a lot of people are renting or didn't build. We'll get into all that. I'm often just like, I don't know how much I want you to fight this battle, because you got a whole other battle going on. You got a lot going on.
And so I think that, Bridget, that's a great point. My firm is called Just Well, and I titled it Just Well because my first priority is that people get well.
Agreed.
I want to get well, and I want my clients to get well. And so we called it Just Well. And that also has to do with justice and wellness and the wellspring of life and all those other things. But wellness first. And I tell clients that their job is to go forth and get well. And my job in the meantime is try to get them financial recovery so that they can use those funds to continue to get well.
That's awesome. So let's get through like some of the nuts and bolts before I ask you questions. First of all, what's your URL for your site?
Well.law.
Well.law. Okay. And can you only represent people in Texas or what?
It's a good question. You can call me from anywhere in the country. And what I'm trying to do is raise up lawyers to refer people to. So I have counsel in California, Massachusetts, Arizona, North Carolina.
Oh, awesome.
I am actively raising up lawyers around the country.
So
if you come to us first, I have an intake director, Casey McCurry, who's a survivor herself. I mean, everybody who works with us is affected in some way. They are on mission. Every single person in my firm is on mission. And so she will field the phone call determine if they have if they have like a reasonable case, help them kind of put it together. And then if they're in another state, refer them to counsel in another state. And then I can take cases in Texas. I am almost at capacity. I keep getting roped into new cases because I can't help it. I just really want to help people, and I just can't. I mean, I have a new person I'm talking to on Monday whose lawyer dropped the ball, and they have a trial scheduled next month. And I mean, I can't help it. I can't help it. I can't help it. So, so anyway, but I'm mostly at capacity in Texas. But I'm again trying to raise up lawyers in Texas to take these cases, and I'm my promise to them is, listen, go take the case and I will help you. I will give you the request for production. I'll give you the draft complaint. I'll give you the claims. I'll give you the potential experts. Like, I'll make connections for you and walk you through the process. So that if you have anybody watching has any lawyer who wants to take these cases in any state, please connect us.
This is a recruitment call. Yeah, I mean, Christina, we tried probably 5-6 attorneys to get on an event I had, and we couldn't. We had a really hard time. I think also, unlike you, a lot of them are like, what does she mean? She wants to do an interview? Like, they have no idea. But I appreciate that you're like just out here, like spreading the word. From my understanding, there's a lot of attorneys graduating who are struggling actually to find jobs. At least I heard that a year or two ago. So I don't know if that's still the case. But yeah, there's a huge need in this mold field. And I think in my case with my home, there wasn't really any legal action to take, but I think there are definitely other cases that are. So just to go over some of the categories, we have new builds.
Yep.
We have, what do you call it? Resale homes, a home you built from another or bought from another owner. Then we have renters, and then we have military housing, which is something you've worked with. Are there any other categories I'm missing? A workplace building, I suppose.
Yeah, those kind of cover it. One challenge that you have is that, I mean, as you know, industry dominates this field. And so industry has convinced the insurance industry also, whether it's the building industry or the insurance industry or the leasing industry, all of them have a vested interest in quelling any discussion of toxic mold, right?
Yeah.
And they've been very successful at that. And anyone who speaks about this publicly has a target on their back. And you just need to be real about that. And I'm like already out there. And so are you, and there are others, but I understand the lawyers that don't want to put it on their website that they do this work. I get
Interesting.
But for that reason, nobody can find those lawyers, right? And so I want to be the bridge to get to those lawyers for the people who need them.
So what if it's just a lawyer who works in like renters' rights? Is that a lawyer who would take on a mold case?
Yes. So it's a question of, one question is, what are you going after? A lot of the people who see you, Bridget, are sick, right? Mm-hmm. So those people who have become sick from the negligence of somebody else have a remedy against the person who made them sick. So I like to say at Just Well, we represent sick families against the people in the companies that made them sick.
Gotcha.
So that's a personal injury lawyer. Now there are construction lawyers too who do this. Construction lawyers can take a case, or landlord-tenant lawyers can take a case, and I can teach them how to add in the personal injury side. Or maybe you just want your property compensated, right? That is way easier and faster than adding the personal injury part of the claim. Maybe having the personal injury part of the claim will ensure that you get the full value of your construction and your property damage.
I see.
So there are lots of different ways to attack it. But typically the best person to bring these claims are usually personal injury lawyers.
Okay. Yeah, those are definitely some nuances I did not understand. Okay. So let's talk about different cases. And I don't know if you know, we interviewed a holistic realtor recently, and she was talking about it. I know. It was like, what? Yeah, so she kind of talked about, her name is Heather Rose. I can connect you guys. But yeah, basically she had her own mold story and now really helps do great inspections for buyers, but she knows about some of these legal things. For instance, and I think you know about this too, we'll start with this. In a new build, they are often putting in a clause that you can't like come back and sue them or something like that. Is that correct?
So they have arbitration clauses, which just means that you have to go to arbitration. I'm not afraid of those clauses.
Okay.
Because when you have to go to trial in a jury trial, at least in Texas, it can take a really, really long time. The trial can get pushed. COVID happens, courts shut down, all those things. Whereas arbitration is much more predictable. You have a particular date and you get to march towards arbitration on a particular date. And I like that.
My impression, and maybe I misunderstood her, was that it was almost a clause that like you can't come back at us at all. Is that not true?
I don't think that.
You haven't seen that.
Certainly, if there is a clause like that, I would litigate that as unconscionable, and I would bring the claim anyway.
I love it. Okay. Yeah. And she said, if that's in a contract or however she phrased it, I'll have to go back, look for that and have that discussion. Obviously it's a hot market and all this stuff, but there are tons of new builds that end up with water damage, even in your first, year. And I feel like that's a case that you do have something to stand on more than like my house was an old house and it was a resale situation and all that. So somebody put in the comments here, I have a new build home with construction defects leading to water damage and mold. Builder hired a remediation company that made things worse and failed PRV testing. We're stuck with a house. Do you know any lawyers in Missouri?
Missouri. Maybe. I will look for you. Reach out to Casey. You can put in the chat Casey at well.law, CASEY@well.law, or just put in an inquiry on my website and I'll look for a lawyer in Missouri. Okay.
Guys, and sometimes my comments only go to YouTube and not Facebook. It's kind of annoying. So
heard my answer. Reach out to me on my website.
Well.law, easy one to remember. Yeah. So yeah, that's a pretty, typical kind of thing I'm hearing. One thing
what happens, Bridget, as you've probably seen, is that whether it's a new build, when you don't know that much about this, because it's just happened to you for the first time, if you are in a landlord-tenant situation or in a new build, you think, oh, insurance isn't going to cover this. That's not cool. So I'll make the landlord handle this, right? Or I'll make the builder handle this. And so you tell the builder about the problem, or you tell the landlord about the problem, and you think that they're going to handle it appropriately and they're going to remediate properly. But that's not in their best interest. And also, they don't know how to do it. And so they hire a mold inspector who takes an air sample in the middle of the room and is like, looks good. You don't have a problem, right?
Right.
That could happen. Or they could say, oh, you know what? It is and I hear this every day. It is the vents. It's just the vents. You're just seeing it a little bit on the vent. No problem. We'll take care of that for you. And so they make a big show of it. They take down the vents. They take them outside. They scrub them. Sometimes they paint them and they come back in and they like put them back up. And they're like, we're done. We fixed it. And of course, we know that the problem is within the ducts, not on the vent. And also, where's the source of the mold?
I haven't even heard of that one. It's so dumb.
I mean, right?
But, well, and there's all sorts of dumb things landlords do to like fix it, right? Or even homeowners. Like I still am hearing bleach paint over it. I'm like, are we still talking about this? So yeah. Unfortunately, and I've said this because I've been getting interviewed a lot, like you really have to back up and educate yourself. And I've been learning from different folks. Like if you're having a verbal conversation with your landlord that's not documented, now they're coming in and doing a shoddy job. Like there's so many things that could go wrong, unfortunately, in those relationships. I know we're both going to be face palming this whole
And we basically say, no, so we basically say, listen, if you have a big mold problem and it's in a rental, get out of there as fast as possible.
I 100% agree.
You're not going to be able to fix it.
They're not gonna be able to fix it. It's a rental. Like I know the rental market's tough, but like now I'm at the point where I'm like, I don't care if you have to move in with your like chain smoking mother-in-law for a few months just to start moving on. Because I can't believe the number of people who are like, I'm still in this house. It's been 5 years. I'm still fighting with my HOA. It's been 5 years. And I'm like, why are you still there?
Right.
You're getting sicker. So
they don't, because one reason they're still there, Bridget, is because their
brain doesn't work right. I know.
And
I can relate.
They're having a hard time figuring out like that the best thing is to leave. And they also, I think we think that the HOA is going to do the right thing. It just needs to be remediated properly. They think, right? Like they're just going to come in and fix it, and they don't appreciate that you can't. That they're not going to fix it very well or the right way. So that's a huge issue. But also bear in mind that I get people a lot who say, I've known about this problem for years. I've been telling them about the leak in the bathroom for years. And my answer almost always is, you are probably not going to survive the statute of limitations. It's been too long. You can't bring a case anymore.
I mean, that's kind of what happened in my resale house, so to speak. Like, you know, my ex bought the house before I was a part of it, but I guess they didn't see anything in inspection. I mean, frankly, I'm sure they didn't know what to look for. You know, then we were living there a long time before we had brought in a mold inspector. So yeah, our insurance is just like, that's neglect, and there was no action to take. So there isn't always someone to blame, and the most important thing is to move, you know. But if you do move, Christina, like say you move out of a rental, your landlord wasn't responsive, or you know, can you move out and then still take legal action? I would think so.
Yes. So what we say is, first of all, I won't represent someone who's not willing to move out, because I am so sorry, but if I can't, I understand that not everybody can move out or can't move out right away. And I totally get that. And you can call me when you are able to move out, so long as your statute of limitations hasn't passed. But what I want people to know is, I can't claim your house is uninhabitable if you're still inhabiting it.
That's a great point. I'm going to write that down.
I can't claim that your house is uninhabitable if you're still there. And so I had to tell this one woman, she called me and I was kind of in a hurry. And I was like, listen, I'm sorry, but your doctor told you that your kid's going to die if you don't move out of that place. And I just can't talk to you until you're out. When you're out, call me back. And it was kind of the kick in the pants that she needed. I was in a hurry. I probably was not as tactful as I would normally be. I remember exactly where I was standing. And she says, that was a conversation that really affected the rest of their life, because they got out and of a super toxic place, and her kid could have died. And Bridget, the wrongful death claims, those are no joke. I have three.
Wow. I can't even. That makes
one of them died when she was my client.
Wow. You know, I've been hearing a little bit of scary stories about infants too. So there's definitely more I want to learn. But, you know, I've kind of had to go a little, I think that's what I should start to say too. We were on a training call, similar, a woman still in the rental, about 5 years, deteriorating young woman. And I'm like, your homework is to email me in 6 weeks and tell me where you're living. Like, I don't even want to talk about any other aspect of this case until you move out. Because it's, and I get it. Like, I was lucky to have an engineer ex-husband who was like, we're doing this, like, very unemotional, like, you know, because I was the sickest one and I didn't really want to move and deal with all this, but I'm very thankful I did. So coming now on the other side, you can't get well in a sick building. So Great point. Okay, we have some questions, and I just learned I can pop them up on the screen, which is pretty exciting. Let me do this one from Jody about a moldy building. This is an interesting one.
Oh, man. That is tough. Again, I would ask, what do you want to get out of it? Begin with the end in mind. What do you want the employer to do about it? Do you want to work from home? It sounds like home is not so safe for you either. Do you have like a coffee shop is there some accommodation that you want? Just telling them that they have a moldy building is probably not going to do much. But
No.
you can say, especially because they're not going to remediate it properly. And a lot of times remediating makes it way, way, way worse. So recognizing that they're probably not going to remediate and probably not going to remediate properly, the question for you is, are you going to be healthy staying there? Is there another job that you might want to switch to? Is there another part of the building you could be in? Is there another place you could work?
I love that. You're just getting down to like the simple answers. It's a great point. I mean, I think again, it's tough when your brain isn't working, but often it is time to make some like big changes in your life. And like, is this even a job I want? Okay. Yeah. Can they provide another space for me? Cause yeah, they're probably not going to clean up that whole thing. And then your home is a problem too.
Be like a Debbie Downer, but I guess now I know a lot of people who have had cancer or who have died. And so it's kind of like and I understand it's not always easy to get to ground zero in mold. I get that. It's not. But there are degrees of it. And can you get to a safer place? Not the safest, not the cleanest, not like absolutely clean, not a tent in Arizona, but can you get to a safer place? And if you don't, you're risking your life.
Yeah, I'm really glad you're throwing that down because especially when I hear people being years, that's really like scary. I've been interviewed a couple times and people were like, well, what would have happened to you if you had never known about mold or moved? And I literally was like, I would have killed myself. Like I was going down that road. That's a very scary thing to say, but like I just couldn't have gone on like that. So yeah, things can only get worse, and you just have to think about kind of yourself first. And really, I have a section on the book in this. It's like just evaluate like what are your options, and really open up the conversation. And that's hard when you're in trauma, but there's some tools to like get out of trauma at least for 20 minutes and think about, oh, I could live here or do this work or like work in a co-working space or whatever. So thank you, Jody. That was a great question.
And Jody, I think another answer for you is like, can you take a 2-week vacation away from your house and away from the moldy building, the employer building, maybe even to Arizona, maybe to the desert? Can you go away and clear your brain? I think sometimes getting out, even for a short time, allows you to start thinking differently. And you don't need to make any decisions right now about your house or your work. Like, just get away for a couple weeks and see. And
get some perspective. I like that.
In a place where your brain might be a tiny bit clearer. It's not going to clear up immediately overnight just by going on vacation. I don't like that either. But can you get away for just a little bit so you can have some perspective?
Yeah, just to change the location, give some change of perspective. So here's a question from Thais about selling a home. What do you mean by building paper, Thais? Is that like the drywall? The
Tyvek? Probably means Tyvek.
Maybe you can say in the chat, Thais. But I think, I don't know, isn't it as long as you disclose, Christina, that you can still sell?
Yeah, just disclose and sell.
Yeah.
Disclose
in this market, you'll probably do just fine. Yeah, you don't have to remediate to sell. You just have to be honest about what the situation is.
That's right. And I think, if you remediate if you disclose and sell, if you want to bring a suit or if there is a suit to be brought, then the damages become the difference in the sales price from if you sold when it was moldy versus what the sale price would have been if it was not moldy. And a good realtor can give you that assessment.
She said the building paper is between the frame and the stucco. Okay, so it's the stucco type. Yeah, we ended up, I guess we didn't know we'd sell our home, but we ended up replacing all the siding, which then meant we had to replace the patio and the deck. And we spent tens of thousands of dollars. And we definitely sold in good conscience after retesting. But I don't know if we would have done all of that if we knew we were just going to sell. Like, the average person just doesn't really care that much. But I mean, I think we still made a profit and all that. I feel good about, bringing a really solid house to market. But yeah, sometimes it's just not worth it, especially if it's $200K, Thais.
Well, the other thing that you find is that you start rebuilding. This is what happened with our house. We started rebuilding and then we found more and more and more.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Like, oh, this is why we were so sick. Like, we actually thought it was just in my daughter's room, and or we thought like the main source was my daughter's room. And then during the rebuild, we found 8 feet of chitomium in the kitchen, like just a full on thick cloth. And the kitchen was saturated, and the living room had stachybotrys in it and chitomium. And it was like, oh, we actually got it all wrong. We thought upstairs was most affected. It turns out it's the whole downstairs.
Yeah.
So having to gut the kitchen, gut the inside. I mean, we spent over $600,000 remediating this house, just fixing.
Wow.
Yeah. And you can imagine while we're doing that, you're spending alternative living expense. You're like out of the house. I mean, we spent every dollar we had and more. We had to borrow to like make ends meet, right? It's just, if you disclose and sell, you are saving yourself all of that trauma.
I think so. And I think it's so hard. I think a lot of things we don't often realize when we start fixing up a home is, I think it's so rare to be able to move back in safely. That's a debate that, could be a long debate, but it's so easy to still have a little bit, behind the fridge or in the ductwork. It's like so expensive. A coach who works for me did all of this, like all of it, down to like the studs, new appliances, and they still ended up moving out. That happens a lot. I just think whether you own or rent, often just getting out, this isn't the only house in the world. The one you're in is not the only house in the world. It's just a house. So yeah. Okay, I got one more I'll put up here. How do I get to see the rest of my comments? Oh, here we go. This one is more about the medical field.
That's very common. And what I will say though is that I think the medical world is changing a lot. Systemic inflammation is caused by toxic exposure, and it's a multisystemic inflammatory response to a pathogen. And it turns out that's actually very similar to COVID. So we're learning from COVID how to treat mold in some ways. And we're seeing that the world is coming to terms with the fact that there is a thing called multisystemic inflammation, and we can treat it, and it's real. And I think that the more doctors kind of come to terms with that, the more that they'll be educated and the more they'll see. But you have to recognize that industry has had such a heavy hand in the research and in the science. And the good news is that where they're not influenced, like in Europe, there are great new scientific studies coming out about what water damaged buildings do to the body. And it's just going to take a while for the world to catch up to that science. But the science is real. And, people ask, is this controversial in the medical field? It actually isn't. The science isn't controversial. There aren't very many studies that say that mold is safe for you, right? Like, I mean, I'd be curious to hear what you think, Bridget, but what I'm seeing in the science is this is very clear. This is not controversial anymore. This is mold causes a systemic inflammatory response. Mold causes immune dysregulation. Mold causes neurological challenges, and mold causes respiratory challenges. And the list can go on and on. But the research is clear that each of those things is true. And that is scientifically, it's not controversial.
Yeah, I mean, I just, for an example, have a client who lives in Oregon, and her Kaiser doctor is actually super down with mold and had mold. I mean, this is a needle in a haystack still within the insurance community, but I do think it's evolving because even doctors end up in moldy houses. Like, it's gonna start, becoming. I mean, I have so many doctor friends who have moved out of that model into functional medicine. So it is changing, but you have to, if you want someone to take your mold case seriously, you've got to know someone, go to someone who works in this field. If you just go to a rando, primary care, yeah, they may not know about it. I do think it's changing even just in public awareness, because now if I say I specialize in toxic mold, I always wait to see, are they going to know what that is? More often they do know. So it's coming into awareness. As far as your actual visit and overcharging, I mean, I think that's probably in the past. The rental, I mean, this is all sort of timed out, and now it's just time to, work on your health for yourself. I do hear a lot in this space, like, oh my gosh, I'm so saddled with like charges and like it's so expensive. We're all in that boat, right? Kristina was in that boat. 600,000 is a lot of money. I mean, I was in that boat to the tune of probably over 100,000. It's sort of all of us, and sometimes someone like Kristina can help you get money for that, and sometimes it's just not going to happen, right? It's just not going to happen. So we kind of, in my opinion, have to just like do what we can within our budget to move forward. There's a lot of detox tools that are free, low cost, just being in nature, that kind of a thing. So, yeah, it's always disappointing to feel unheard, but, kind of like don't get into a legal battle that isn't worth it. Like, don't get into that battle with a closed-minded practitioner either. Like, it's just not worth it.
Yeah. You'll move on, and you'll find there are great providers who are affordable, and it's just a matter of finding them. What I give to every client who calls our office, and I've now given out, I think, over 1,000, which is like, if I close down tomorrow, it will have been worth it, because I gave this 2-pager that's basically what I wish I had known. So if you contact our office, you're going to get like my 2-page, this is what I wish I had known when I was in your shoes. This is how you hire a certified mold inspector. This is how these are some recommendations to remediate. Not that I have all the answers in there. I mean, Bridget and others have way more, but just a starting point of like, this is what I wish I had known, including the Facebook groups, right? I didn't even know. Yeah. I had never heard of mycotoxin. I had never heard of Stachybotrys. And I think the awakening for me was like, I'm a pretty educated person. I've gone to great schools my whole life. Why have I never heard that there was this pathogen out there that could be so dangerous for me and my family?
Yeah. Yeah. And some of the symptoms you described in situations I can totally relate to. I'll just take this last question from Dorothy, and then we'll close up, more general about, I think this is how a lot of people feel. How am I ever going to find a safe place? So in my book, some of you guys are in my book club, but I'll show it. You can use your 5 senses as you go through a new rental, right? Just sniffing, looking for water stains, asking questions about water damage, just kind of getting a sense, like, do they take pride in managing this building or not? A client of mine, also in Oregon, because it's such a hot spot, other people had already run mold tests before they moved into that building. So how amazing is that? So again, it kind of depends. What are your thoughts, Kristina?
Gosh, I find it so hard. My like wonderful mold inspector, one of them, I have a few, but one is Josh Rachel in Texas of Texas Mold Inspectors. Just like brilliant, kind man who's been through this
You
himself.
want me to write that down? What was that? Josh?
Josh Rachel of Texas Mold Inspectors. And he'll
Okay.
let you fly anywhere in the country and charges way less than some of these other firms that are doing that. But he's amazing. And I sent him to 5 houses for me in Austin, and all of them were bad. He said, so I chose the one that was least bad. And then he helped me understand how to make it as safe as I possibly could, which involved pressurizing the air, adding, doing a round of bioprotect, having air purifiers in every room. And that's where I am now until I can build a safe house. And I'm in the midst of building a safe house now, finally. Well,
Wow.
I'm about to. I have like a wonderful safe builder here who's affordable and not going to break the bank. So it's going to be a journey to get to safety. And what you have to understand about the science is that because you were exposed in this really probably extreme situation, now you're more susceptible in the future. And that is so upsetting. But now even the smallest amount is going to affect you differently. So you have to be hyper vigilant and look for the conditions in addition to what Bridget said, look for the conditions that you know are bad. So my old house had spray foam and an HVAC that was bad. We moved to a rental and we started getting sick pretty soon after we were in the rental, like a few months in. And I could tell I was losing my words again. And I had my HVAC guy come over and he confirmed that that house had the same condition as my old house of like the bad HVAC and the spray foam condition.
Mm.
And I should have known. I wish I had seen that, right? But you can, and we had to evacuate our like first rental, and now we're in this other one that I had those inspectors go look at. So it's going to be a journey to get to safety, um, and that's it's probably going to be a lifelong journey. Now your world is going to be different because you're going to be thinking about you have to be hyper vigilant about where you live and the conditions of the place you're in.
Yeah, it's 100% true. You've got to practice good maintenance. I mean, you can move to a drier climate, not that it's guaranteed, but it is easier, I think, to find, less water damage. I have a few friends and myself who's done that. I can't post to the Facebook groups, so I put this one resource under my name here, and then I'll put, yeah, Thais, I put it on the video under my name. It's Josh at Texas Mold Inspectors. And then I'll put the name of the book because it's so annoying that I can't put this in the chat properly. Yeah, it often can be a few places. So I generally encourage people to like be a little transient for a while, whether it's like you live somewhere for the summer and then you live in a rental that's you can kind of get out of. Mold can unfortunately kind of follow you. It's again, you're not the only one. If you find that mold is following you, it happens to a lot of people. But there are things you can do to inspect and ask questions. Like I said, it's tough to get a full mold panel run while you're in the inspection period of buying a home. But there are some steps you can take. You can see my Instagram interview with that realtor, just getting like a super thorough inspection of like the roof in different areas. So there are some options. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, so there are options for cleaning too, but yet they're not permanent. They're
Yeah.
not permanent. They're not going to do the job. They're just, maybe while you're cleaning out your house for a couple weeks or waiting for your next place to get ready for a month, you can wipe stuff down, do mold candles. Again, it's in the book, but I don't love, a conversation of how do I make myself house safe when it still has mold in it. It really needs to be cut out and remediated properly. So everything else is just temporary.
Yeah. But temporary, everything else is just temporary. But Sometimes temporary is longer than we want it to be.
Exactly. We stretch it out. I don't know if that's what you meant,
Yeah.
but
No. Sometimes we stretch it out unnecessarily, but sometimes it's the best you can do for a period of time, like while you're building a safe house. And I think especially when you have kids, the trauma of moving a bunch can be really traumatic for them too. And so I just want to affirm and recognize that sometimes you're choosing the worst of two evils. I mean, the lesser of two evils. And once you have been exposed to this, you're faced with bad and worse choices, and that's horrible, and that's really unfortunate. And once you kind of recognize that, then it's easier, I think, to make the tough calls, because you know that you're making tough choices and you're just going to do the best you can any given day. And today I'm going to wake up and I'm going to do the best I can, and I'm going to take it 1 hour at a time, because you're in crisis for a while, and I'm going to see my way out of this, and you can see your way out of it, and you will be okay, but it's going to take some time, and that's okay.
it's going to take some time and some steps and some missteps. And yeah, I think I really heartened to hear that we're on the same page for a lot of this advice, even though we're coming at it from kind of two different angles. So thank you so much for everyone who is on. Again, Kristina has resources at her site, which is well.law, correct?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then if you're not in the book club, you can get my book. It answers like a lot of the questions you guys are asking, right? We ask about the home and inspection and health, and there's just lots of questions, which is why I wrote the book, because there really wasn't a book to take you through the whole process. And there's just so many questions that come up. So yeah, Dorothy, you can check there, or check with Kristina. Kristina, thank you so much again for your time. I just really love this discussion.
Well, Bridget, I mean, thank you for everything. Thank you for putting together that guide, and I'm going to recommend it now to everyone who reaches out to our.
Oh no, I should send you a copy. Let me get your address.
I have it, but I also want to direct my people who come to me to a guide, because that's what people just need, resources. And
there's so many questions.
Meeting people where they are and giving them the information they need. Like, thank you on behalf of all of us who are still recovering, because it matters and it makes a big difference.
There's so many mistakes to make. There's so many questions. I mean, we made so many mistakes in our process. So I would just encourage people to take a step back and educate before you like go tearing down a wall, doing this, doing that. Like, you can really cost yourself some money. So yeah, just educate. It's a very complex topic, but you can get there, and you can get to the other side too. We have lots of clients in that place. So thanks, everybody. And actually, if you're in the book club, we have a call tomorrow at 9 a.m. If you're not in the book club yet, go get in the book club. You can reach out to our team about how to do that, and I'll put that in the chat as well. So thanks, everybody. See some of you in the morning. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.